Good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us again for another round of SCSA webinars. Today we have a very special guest, Anthony Butkovic. Hopefully I didn't say that name wrong again, but
No,
he's
good.
here today to talk about WCB claims with us. And so before we get into the meat and potatoes of his presentation, just a few housekeeping things that we generally discuss at the beginning of these. So as always, the sessions are recorded, so they will be available on our social media channels afterwards if you'd like to review or share with anybody. If you're watching on Zoom, there is a Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen, and you can enter any questions you might have for Anthony in there, and we will get to those at the end of his presentation. And as well, if you're watching on Facebook, you can put questions into the comment section on Facebook, and we will try and get to those as well. And so a little bit before we get started about our guest here. So Anthony actually began his career with WCB in 2005 as a case manager. In 2011, he left WCB to start WCBconsulting.ca. So a company specializing in educating employers on how to manage and appeal their own WCB claims across Canada. So some of his strategies have been adopted by companies of every size, industry, and province. And to date, his strategies have saved some employers over $12 million in premiums and rebates, including millions more in successful bidding opportunities by having a healthy safety statistics record. So WCB Consulting, his firm, provides an online program that's designed for employers that want or need to manage their appeals or their WCB claims. So he's going to provide some information today for our members on things like simplifying claims management within your company, where to find WCB resources to get the results that you'd like, and some elements that you can use to help you work through those WCB claims and potentially appeal them as well. So thanks for joining us, and I will hand it on over to you, Anthony.
Thank you. And thank you guys for joining me today. WCBconsulting.ca is a company I started 10 years ago because a few friends of mine kept calling me, asking me for help with WCB claims, and I saw it as an opportunity to make some more money. Now, that was 10 years ago. And what I realized after doing this for the past 10 years is that when it comes to WCB, people are just trying to find solutions to problems. And that's really what business is finding solutions to problems. And as I looked around and I saw that everyone was looking for information on how to manage and appeal claims, and they were all getting the information in the same way from the same organizations. Yet, rarely did they walk away with anything that made their life simpler, something that they could actually use. And often these same clients would tell me that the process was confusing and still didn't make sense after the training. So I want you to take a moment now and think about what brought you here today. Have you attended seminars and courses but still feel it's hard to manage claims yourself? Perhaps you've had a claim you didn't agree with and want to know how to appeal it. Or you're not quite sure what WCB is and you want to gain more knowledge in case a claim does occur. Whatever your reason for being here, I want to provide you with information that makes this whole WCB thing a lot less painful. Before we get going, if you haven't yet, now would be a good time to grab a paper and a pen to take notes as we go along. I encourage you to revisit this video on the SCSA YouTube channel in the future as a refresher when you need it. As a bonus for joining us, at the end of the presentation, I'm going to share with you how you can get access to one hour of one-on-one coaching with me or my team. But first, let's get started. My goal today is not to consult, but to educate. It's been the driving force of my company since day one. And here's a better way to figure out what to do with your claims. When a WCB claim happens, you're either managing or you're appealing the claim. And so the question you want to ask yourself in the beginning is, which one are you dealing with? And while this may seem overwhelming at times, I'll be providing you with strategies today to get rid of the overwhelm and replace it with simple steps you can do today, regardless of your experience with WCB. Which is why we will discuss a new way to look at the workers' compensation system, 3 things you can do to simplify claims management today, and three elements I use to help me win in any WCB appeal. So think for a moment what you want to take away from this time together and what you would want to implement in your company today. I encourage you to write down any questions you may have as I go through the presentation, as there will be time at the end to go over them. Now, when I was putting all of this together, I decided to take the same training and attend the same seminars you may have. And even with my knowledge of WCB, I was confused. It was my mission to find a way to explain WCB processes so that regardless of changes to policy, it didn't matter with the industry that you work in and the size of your company, or even the provinces you work in. For those of you that might do work outside of the province, I had to make sure that my strategies worked. And so most clients I work with have less than 100 employees working for them. And perhaps your company is one of them. I know that many of you have had varying experiences with WCB. For many of us, we weren't sure what WCB was or how it worked. It's just something you're supposed to have. And you may have been told to get it so that you could bid work or to protect yourself from a lawsuit, or you may have experience with WCB, and depending on where you worked and the types of claims you faced, you have mixed feelings and beliefs about WCB. The reason a company may call me is because often they see this giant complicated system and they're looking for help. They either want me to handle the claim for them or teach them and give them the information to handle it themselves. Because just like me, you want to make the best decision to improve your business for your employees and your clients. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because I'm here to answer your questions and show you a simpler way to decide when and how to use WCB. In a moment, I'll start by going through the top 3 things you can do to simplify claims management. And as I go through them, I want you to consider now the word control. What does control mean to you? Do you automatically think of something positive or negative? And more importantly, how can you maintain control of a claim, and why is this important? For many of us, the only time they have to think or worry about WCB is when a claim actually happens. Regardless of the size of your company, a WCB claim is an interruption to the normal workings of your business or your organization. And who here enjoys an interruption? I suppose if it's a good interruption, we'll welcome it, but a WCB claim is usually not one of those. So for most, WCB is an interruption that they would rather avoid. The reason being, in many cases, we don't feel in control of the WCB claim. We rely on WCB or other people to tell us what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. But what if instead of relying on WCB, you could control a claim and use WCB as an ally to achieve the results that you want? One of my goals for today is to show you that when faced with a WCB claim, how you can better use the claims management system to work with WCB for a positive outcome given circumstances. I want to help you control a claim, thus giving you the best opportunity to influence the outcome that you really want. Now, many of you may be the owners of the company or perhaps work for a company where you're responsible to manage the WCB claims when they happen. It's your responsibility to fill out the reports and manage the care of the worker. Regardless of your role or interest in a claim, the information is designed to make your life easier. So let's get rolling. Question number 1. What is WCB? Is it really a big government agency that everyone is forced to listen to? Not at all. When I try to make sense of a complex issue, I will attempt to compare the issue to things I already know to make it easier for me to understand. So here's a technique I used when I first started WCB many years ago. To simplify what is WCB, I want you to take a moment and think about WCB as an insurance company. What do you think about that? You may be thinking of car insurance, house insurance, or short-term disability insurance you'd get through your company. Now, why do I use this comparison? Because with insurance, you pay a premium to protect yourself from some sort of loss. And the insurance company uses policies to decide what they will pay and when they will pay it. Now, take a moment and think of WCB in the same way. If we consider that WCB is an insurance for your business, then we know we are protecting ourselves from a loss. And in this case, if someone claims to be hurt while working for you, you don't get sued. And I know many of you already knew that. but you also pay a premium that goes up or down depending on the risks of a claim happening or how much a claim costs the insurance company. So I'm going to try something and I hope it works. Imagine for a second you own a Ferrari. Call the insurance company and you ask how much it'll cost to insure it. What do you think they will tell you? Now imagine you're driving a little Ford Focus. You call the same insurance company. How much do you think it'll cost to insure it? To WCB, the Ferrari is like any industry where the risk of loss will cost them a lot of money. Take construction, for example. That is an industry full of risks. The Ford Focus is like a call center to WCB, a place where a worker will sit at a desk in a climate-controlled office. The likelihood of an expensive claim decreases, so naturally, so do your premiums. And it doesn't stop there. Compare two of the same companies in the same industry. One has a lot of claims and another doesn't. Naturally, the one with more claims will have higher premiums. It's just like if you're an 18-year-old driver with 3 accidents and 4 speeding tickets, your premiums are going to be higher than an 18-year-old with no accidents or any tickets. I hope that this is making some sense. In Canada, WCB is legislated by the government in each individual province. Each province has its own policies and rules that the WCB follows, which means the rules in Saskatchewan are slightly different than they would be in Alberta or Ontario. Which is why if you're sending workers to another province, you might want to check with that province what their rules are before dispatching your workers. In the United States, workers' comp is provided by private insurance companies just like your car insurance. And the governments in Canada have legislated that WCB be mandatory for many of the province's industries, and for good reason too. Claims costs can sometimes get north of $100,000. And if not for WCB, how many companies could afford to pay each worker that gets injured for their wage loss and the medical expenses until they get better? Which brings me to the next question I often get. What if you didn't register an account? What would happen? Aside from penalties and prosecution, you could be on the hook for all the costs of the injuries for many organizations. You could be on the cost for all the injuries, which for many organizations, this would cripple them. And why am I saying all this? Because I am often asked, why is WCB mandatory? What happens if I don't get it? Aside from being sued. Now you know why. In addition, the construction industries and other industries have made WCB as part of their bidding process, which if you think about it, is a way for the industry to police itself. No WCB accounts, no work. Now there's a lot more to this, but for now, we're just going to leave things right there. What is the challenge facing companies when it comes to WCB? For many companies, when you first open a WCB account, it can feel overwhelming with all the stuff that you should and shouldn't do, along with when and how to pay your premiums. But for the most part, you're left to figure it all out on your own. And if you think about, this is common with any insurance that you get. You may have an idea of what your deductible is on your car insurance, but do you know all the little points of your policy? If you're anything like me, you only read it when something happens, and you're worried how much it's going to cost you and are you covered? So notice the similarities. When you're notified of a claim, that panic sets in on what to do and when. And when you get in a car accident, you call the insurance company to notify them of a claim. Yet in the back of your mind, you're wondering, how much is this going to cost you? What will it replace? How much will my premiums be next year? Did you find yourself asking similar questions to WCB? You've notified them of a claim. You're notified that a claim has happened, so you call WCB. And in cases where the claim is accepted, you want to know how much it'll cost you. How much are your premiums going to go up next year? And in cases where you don't agree with the claim, you want WCB to deny it because you're worried about your premiums or your stats for bids. In either case, the accident is judged based solely on the policy. And in human nature, especially if you don't get a lot of WCB claims, it's something that you'll deal with when and if it happens. But it makes sense. Our days are spent focused on our business, on the health and safety, everything else, until one day a claim lands in your lap. And then you find yourself running around, calling WCB or calling a friend to find out how to manage the claim, what forms to fill out, and What do you do with the doctor reports that you're getting? When we do this, the problem is often the information you're collecting is inconsistent. And what you hear from one person may not be the same from the other. Have you ever found yourself in a dilemma of trying to figure out when to take your worker to the doctor or when to let them go by themselves? Have you struggled to understand how WCB comes to its decisions and the rules they use to make those decisions? I know I have. So to alleviate the stress, you'll want to pay attention now to the 3 things you can use to simplify claims management. First and foremost, you have to get documentation under control. Look at documents as evidence that's used to make decisions on the claim. Now, the better the evidence, the better the decisions, which is why I'm recommending that everyone have a claims package. And I'm not just talking about any claims package, but a great one. And I know people have said this before, and you may have one in your company, but pay attention to the documents I am going to share with you, because you may find some of these missing in your claims package. Also, remember that it's not just good enough to have a claims package if it's not being used. Here are some benefits of having them accessible at the time of that you're notified of an injury. The 4 reasons that a claim package is important. Number 1, if you know nothing about claims management, a proper claims management package with a list of instructions will allow you to capture the majority of the most critical information to start managing the claim. And if necessary in the future, capture the evidence today that you're going to need to appeal a WCB claim tomorrow. And I'll talk about appeals in a few minutes. But for now, I want to go to reason number 2. A good claims package can be placed anywhere in the office, in the shop, or in the field. If you have crews working on site, you can keep them in the work truck or in the trailer. So it's easy accessible and doesn't rely on a Wi-Fi signal to be completed, just a pen. Reason number 3, the claims package I've designed for clients and is available in our online program is designed so that the majority of it is filled out by the injured worker. Because one of the major complaints I found from companies is that it takes the safety person or the foreman or the claims manager so many hours to complete all that paperwork. And when I asked them about this, the feedback I got was, how can we have the worker fill out more of the documents? If their injury isn't severe that they can still read and write, the paperwork can be filled out in the waiting room of the medical clinic, in your office, or in some cases on the drive to see the doctor. This frees up time for your safety officer or your claims manager or whoever in the company while providing consistent reporting each and every time a claim happens. Lastly, capturing the information in this way makes the life of the person at WCB that's managing your claim so much easier. And regardless of your dealings with WCB in the past, you want to make their life as easy as possible. And I'm speaking from personal experience as a case manager. The easier you make the WCB's job, the better decisions you will get on your claims. And why is this? Because you want to remember that they are people working a job just like anybody else. They have Mondays, they have kids keeping them up at night, and many, I'm sure, can't wait till Fridays. They're often given poor paperwork as evidence and expected to make good decisions. This is why when you send in evidence that's complete and concise, your company stands out for all the right reasons. You begin to form trust between WCB and you and your company that you can benefit from in the future. I read that the Harvard Business School did a study on the 3 elements of trust in business. They found that in order to have trust with another company, you needed a positive relationship, good judgment or expertise, and consistency. You always want to be the first to create a positive relationship with WCB, especially the decision maker, because often they will be the same person to deal with your other claims in the future. So even if the current claim doesn't go in your favor, if you've established a good relationship, and let's say, for example, a worker comes in 6 months down the road and reports an incident late, you may not know what to do. However, because you've developed a good relationship with the case manager 6 months earlier on your previous claim, even though it didn't go in your favor, you can call them and explain the situation requesting guidance. one of the greatest reasons for my success has been because of the relationships I've made with WCB. It's just like any other company, people do get promoted. So the case manager you're yelling at today could be a supervisor that can help you tomorrow. Just something to keep in mind. So what should be in a claims package? Here's a list of documents I recommend you have and the reasons for having them. A challenge I find for many companies is, how do you fill out the WCB paperwork? Which is why I'm going to go through some of these in more detail in a few minutes. But first, you're going to want to have an instruction sheet on how to fill out each document. And again, why this is important is if you don't have any experience with WCB or you're new to the company and you're responsible for filling this out, these instructions will tell you exactly what to do and how to do it so that you capture the best information for your employer. There's a checklist of all the documents in the claims package. When you're dealing with this many documents, you're going to have situations where some things could get missed. The checklist is like a quality control mechanism to make sure that all the documents that need to be completed are and are submitted to whoever's going to be managing this claim. You have your accident incident report, witness statements, the modified work offer, which is the agreement between you and your injured worker when they are returning back to modified, a letter to the doctor. Letter to the doctor is in situations where you don't have your own medical clinic that you send your workers to, but they want to go see their own doctor or they're seeing a physiotherapist. This letter essentially tells them that you have a modified work program and that in the event that something comes up, that there's restrictions, that you can accommodate them. There's also the functional abilities form, which is the form that is given to confirm what are the restrictions of the worker as a result of this injury. The acknowledgement of modified work form. Now, this form was created because on one of our sites, we were having issues with workers who would report a small incident. They bumped their elbow, they tweaked their knee, nothing of any significance, but they mentioned it. Didn't go see a doctor, didn't need to fill out any paperwork or receive any treatment. But a few days later, they'd go see the doctor, they'd be given restrictions, and on their own will, they would choose to take 3 days off of work. But then they would come back and ask for wage replacement and 3 days time loss, and WCB would inquire. And what they said was, well, I didn't know modified work was available to me. So what we do now is, in the event someone comes to you and says, I banged my elbow, I got a little bruise or what have you, or a little cut, I don't need any treatment, we have them fill out the acknowledgement of modified work form. This way, if they do decide not to miss work and they have restrictions, we protect ourselves from any time loss. There's the physical demands analysis of the PDA, which is the form that confirms what their job duties were on the day of their accident. And then a consent form. Many medical clinics will not even talk to you if you don't have a consent form completed. They just legally won't even acknowledge that the worker was at their clinic. So as mentioned previously, I want to address how to fill out reports more effectively, specifically the employer's report of WCB and witness statements. So the employer's report. I'm not going to go through the entire document, but what I want to specifically focus on is the portion of the employer's report where they ask for a description of the event. What caused the symptoms the worker is reporting? Because this is what WCB will often look at when considering acceptance of injuries on the claim. And why do I consider this a critical piece of information? Because, and you may want to write this down, in order for WCB to accept a claim, they need to be able to tie a workplace hazard to the diagnosis of the illness or injury. And to put it another way, they want to know how the symptoms are work-related. How you word things may influence the acceptance of something that may or may not be work-related. Consider this. There was a study done in the 70s where participants were shown a series of videos involving car accidents. The scientists wanted to know if the words that they used during questioning could affect the memories of the participants when it came to recalling and estimating the speed of the vehicles at the time of the accident. In one group, they were asked, how fast was the car going when it contacted the other vehicle? Versus, how fast was the car going when it smashed into the other vehicle? What they found was there was a significant difference in the estimated speed reported of the same accident. In fact, a week later, the same participants were questioned if they remembered seeing broken glass in the video after the accident. As you may have already guessed, the group that was questioned using the word smashed were significantly more likely to report seeing broken glass than those questioned using the word contacted in the control group. So why is this important to remember? It's because the person deciding on your claim is a human being. When they make their final decision to accept a claim, they've looked at what are the listed diagnoses, including any pre-existing conditions, and how this is related to the work or hazards of the job at the time of the injury. A common practice is to have the worker fill out the description on the employer's report, or to write down word for word what the worker says happened in that space. The issue, as I demonstrated earlier, is the words you use can have a significant impact on the mindset of the decision maker. So let's use this as an example. Notice the difference between these two descriptions. The worker was walking when they stepped in a hole, fell and twisted their knee, hearing a crunch and feeling a searing sensation inside their knee. Versus, the worker was walking when they stepped in a hole and fell, reporting symptoms in their knee. Can you feel the difference between these two? Both meet the legal requirements of WCB and tell the story of what happened. One just feels a little more painful and severe. And I mentioned pre-existing conditions. Oftentimes, a worker truly doesn't know that a pre-existing condition actually exists in their body. And if you use this first description, I've seen where WCB may acknowledge the pre-existing condition and perhaps accept it as part of the claim. Now, if this confuses you, it's perfectly all right. It confused me in the beginning as well. But the point I'm trying to get across is to be mindful of what and how you are writing things down. Lastly, about employers' reports. WCB prefers that reports are filled out online, and I agree with them, and I encourage you to do so. It can make things go a lot faster in the process, including many other benefits. However, before you go to fill out the online form, here's a tip to help save you some time, especially if you're not getting a lot of WCB claims. My recommendation would be to go to the WCB SAS website and print out a paper copy first. Fill that out and then sit at your desk with a completed form and put the information in the online reporting portal. This is especially helpful if you don't have a lot of claims because you may miss information which you will need to complete the online form. And this can lead to wasted time in chasing information after the fact. So to help you find the paper copy of the employer's report, I want to show you where you can go and download it. If you go to the WCB website and in the search feature type E1 or employer's report, it'll take you to a set of search results. You will want to click on a link with a PDF that you can print and fill out. You can also save it somewhere that you can just click and print in the future. Now, it may feel like you're doing the job twice, but we actually tested this in the office and found that it's actually faster because all the information is right there instead of bouncing around between documents and files or unable to proceed online because information is missing. I want to now bring your attention to witness statements. What you need to know about a witness statement is that they are critical to use. You can't use them enough. But before I go into detail, something to keep in mind whenever you're completing witness statements. Stick to the facts. Oftentimes, I see folks writing these long stories filled with opinions and theories of what may have happened or what someone is feeling. Witness statements are not a good place for this. Remember to be mindful of the words you use. And this goes the same with writing out a statement. This may sound like common sense, but I often get, and I've often read statements where someone in the company would say something like this. I was working with a worker when I heard them yell. I turned around and saw that they had hurt their knee, and when it happened, they were in immediate pain. Later on, while we were both in the office writing out statements, I could see that their hand was shaking, obviously from shock. Now, this statement is full of opinions. They didn't see the accident, but the person was in immediate pain. How do they know that? What if the person was just a little embarrassed? How do they know how much pain the worker is actually feeling? Then later on in their statement, they say their hand was shaking from shock. How is this witness able to diagnose shock? What if the worker had too much caffeine or low blood sugar or was just cold? A statement like this with descriptive words can create a sense of severity in an injury, that may not be that bad. But it's going back to the concept of the experiment where a car contacted versus smashed into another. What about hearsay? What is hearsay? If someone says they know something about a worker, the incident, or a claim, and they write it down with a date and a signature, it's considered a statement and can be used as evidence. If someone says that they heard or know something about a claim and they do not put it in writing with a date and signature, it is considered hearsay. And this does not mean hearsay cannot be used. You can inform WCB of the situation, and if they're able to follow up with a person and get a written or oral statement from them, it could be admissible as evidence. The next thing you want to do is get your own doctor. If you're not on a site that has an on-site nurse, or you don't already have a doctor, you want to find that doctor so that they can work with you. And obviously, if your worker has an injury where they need to be hospitalized, then make sure they get there or call them an ambulance. However, the majority of injuries you'll face won't require hospitalization. Regardless of the size of your company, you should have a doctor that you can send your workers to in case of an injury. Someone that can look over your worker, treat them, recommend x-rays or MRIs, and that is familiar with your modified work program. This is how you control a claim. When you know what move to make and can manage the flow of information, you're controlling the claim. This can be an easy process. I have some clients that call their own family doctor and set up the clinic with them, but if this is something that doesn't make you feel comfortable, there's a simpler approach. You can just begin by Googling the closest clinics to your office, your shop, or any job site you're currently working at. You want to advise them that you're a company working in the area and you're looking for a clinic to send your workers to. If you know approximately how many incidents you get per week or per month, let them know. You want to explain that in case of an incident, you'd like to have your workers seen the same day, and for the worker to fill out a functional abilities, and for the doctor to fill out a functional abilities form to confirm any restrictions and encourage them to return your worker to modified work. You could offer to send the paperwork ahead of time so that the doctor can review it and be aware of it. And they may ask you for a fee of $25 to $100 depending on the clinic. If they are willing to accommodate you, you can secure it through emails and letting them know that you have that agreement in place. And then what you want to do is let people in your company know that you have this doctor, and when an incident happens, where to take them there. Now, while this may seem like a lot, the benefits are significant. You get your workers seen right away and their symptoms are documented. If they go see their own doctor after the appointment, simply give them another functional abilities form and ask their doctor to complete it. If their doctor wants a fee, pay it. It's worth getting the information. The doctor will be familiar with your workplace and know that modified is available. And the medical will be consistent, which will help you reduce your safety statistics. What happens though if the worker refuses to see your doctor, or in some cases, the on-site nurse, and chooses to see their own doctor instead? Ask them to take your paperwork with them to be completed by their doctor. You cannot refuse a worker the right to see their own medical practitioner. So the takeaway here is, the faster you can get your worker diagnosed and treated, the faster they can return to their way of life and contributing to your company. The third thing you can do is to simplify claims management. Understand the resources available to you. Now that might sound odd, but it's my experience that the biggest reason people fail is not from their circumstances, but their ability to be resourceful. Usually we know one way of doing something. It's the only way to do it. We've been doing that forever, and that's it. Most employers will call the WCB to get an answer. But as you call a case manager, you wait on hold, you get transferred, you might leave a voicemail, have to wait for a call back to an answer to a question that you need right now. What if there was another way that you can get the answer you're looking for in just a few minutes? A secret that most WCB consultants use on a regular basis. Have you ever wondered, how does WCB come up with their decisions? What makes them decide which evidence to look at, or what evidence carries more influence? Where are they hiding this information? The WCB isn't hiding anything. In fact, they're hiding it in plain sight. So what do I mean? Anyone who's dealt with WCB claims long enough will have figured out that the WCB website contains information you can use. The problem is how to use this information more effectively, and that's why I'm here. But for now, I want to go over the website as a resource to you. I want to show you how consultants just like me use the WCB website to find the information that we need to determine the outcome we want and how to get all the information that we require. People want to know, what's the trick to WCB? The trick is simple. Know the outcome you want and find the information to make it happen. And if you can't, learn your lessons and move on. In the members area of my website, I tell you how to use the information you'll find on the SAS website to achieve the results that you want. But for now, let's take a moment to understand two key areas where you can find free information to protect your company and understand WCB better. First, let's look at the search feature. And this is simple and straightforward. This is what I use most often. Simply type in your questions and a series of links will come up to answer the questions that you have. It will bring up parts of the policy or other fact sheets that may be of use to you. And it's also the best option if you're at a job site and forced to use your cell phone to get information in a pinch. However, I want to draw your attention to specifically the link at the top of the page that says legislation and policy. This is one of, if not the most important link on this entire site. And the reason this link is so important is because WCB uses policy in order to make decisions. If you're going to appeal a claim, question why they're doing something on the claim, this is where you want to be. If you remember our example earlier, your car insurance policy tells you what's covered, what's not covered, and how the insurance company will decide what to pay and when. This WCB document I'm showing you here is just WCB's version of insurance policy. When you click the link, you'll be taken to a page where if you scroll down on the right-hand side, you're going to see download full policy manual. This will bring you to a PDF version that you can save onto your computer. And as a side note, I wasn't able to do this on my cell phone, so I would recommend that you use a laptop or a desktop in order to get this. Save this document wherever you keep your WCB documents and information for your business. So let's say you're thinking of appealing the acceptance of a WCB claim because you don't think it's work-related. Simply open up the PDF, go to the table of contents where you're going to see on page 80, arising out of and in the course of employment. This is going to take you to the section of the PDF where it describes the definition of the injuries. So you can see where your situation fits. And when you scroll a little further, you're going to see under background, it gives you the WCB's definition of an injury arising out of and in the course of employment. Now, we're not going to go through the whole policy here, but I just want to show you where this information is hidden and how to use it. This is the same policy manual WCB uses to decide on your claims. This is where consultants just like me go to make sense of what WCB is doing and why. We then consider the different interpretations of claim issues and how we can use the evidence we have to support our position. In some cases, if something doesn't make sense, we'll call the decision maker and give them our interpretation of the policy and see if they agree or provide a different perspective. So the first key I wanted you to know about was the WCB website and how to use the search feature. The second is the policy. As a bonus, when you're on the website, if you click on the employer's link, it'll bring you to a page filled with resources, articles, and phone numbers that may be of interest to you depending on your situation. This is a great way to maintain control of the claim. Contrary to some popular belief, WCB isn't out to get anyone. It may feel that way sometimes. I know I've personally had my fair share of disagreements with them. If you display a professional courtesy, they'll often go out of their way to get you extra information that you can use to manage or appeal a claim. Now, sometimes, in spite of our best efforts and knowledge, a claim is just messy. A decision is made, we don't agree with it, and there's nothing we can do. We literally have to ride out the decision. While this could sting financially, what's important is that you recognize it and then take the lessons from the claim and implement them into your company as soon as possible to prevent future similar claims from happening. I've always said, if I'm paying for it, I better get something out of it. And often that's the lesson. Now, with the rest of the time we have today, I want to address WCB appeals and some things that you should know. Rarely do I see something fire up a company as a claim that got accepted when they thought it should be denied. And if a decision has been made on a claim and you don't agree, chances are you're going to be heading to appeals. So these are the three elements I use to help me win in any WCB appeal. In Saskatchewan, appeals must be initiated in writing. Shouting over the phone and arguing with the decision maker is not likely to change an opinion. However, the conversation can lead to information that you can use later on. One thing to remember is that in some cases, the decision maker at WCB cannot change their decision, no matter how much you can. However, there are levels above the original decision maker that can help you see things your way. Oftentimes, what can't be done with the case manager can be done in the appeals department or the tribunal. This is why it's important you always establish and remember what the end goal is. Use each level of appeals within WCB to your advantage. But before we dive deeper into the appeal, here are my tips when thinking you may want to appeal a claim. Number one, always start with a timeline of events. If you watch any detective movie, they are always trying to put the timeline of events together. Why? When you put a timeline together, you get to notice gaps or agreements in the facts. And this helps build the story. It's like you're Steven Spielberg playing a movie of what happened. If something doesn't make sense in the timeline, you now have the ability to go back and investigate it. If it doesn't make sense, make sure you have the evidence to support your position so that your version of the events is concise and persuasive. The number one way to lose influence with someone at WCB is when they can't make sense of the timeline. When you're appealing a claim, you're telling a story. Take a moment now and think of a time in your life when you've told a really compelling story. Did you have a good timeline? What were the elements you included? The second tip is wait to appeal after a decision is made. One of the biggest mistakes I see companies make is they try to launch into a full-scale appeal the moment they find out about a claim. Right away, they're on the phone calling WCB saying that this should be denied. The claim hasn't even been assigned to a decision maker. Paperwork hasn't been sent in yet, and they're appealing. Before you can appeal a decision, you need WCB to make that decision first. If you want to influence the decision, then this is what I recommend that you do. My first suggestion is to find and speak with whoever will be the decision maker. The first person you talk to may not be the one making the decision on the claim. It could be someone that is doing something administrative on the claim and will need to transfer you to the decision maker. A good question to ask is if you're the one calling WCB is, are you the one that's able to make decisions on this claim? If yes, continue. If no, ask to be transferred to the person who is. You want to get the decision maker and tell them that at this moment, you don't agree with the acceptance of the claim, that you have information that you're going to submit to support your position. But until that time, ask the decision maker what information would they need to make a decision based on your discussion of the events up until that point. They will tell you. Next, you don't have to give an official argument in writing until you have WCB's decision. During the decision-making process, you may explain the concerns that you have and evidence to support your concerns, but an official appeal argument isn't necessary. Now, while some may disagree with me, I have found that if your concerns do not result in the outcome you wanted, you will have greater difficulty appealing the claim later on, as the WCB's position will be that they considered your argument in the beginning when they provided their decision. You will now have to go to the next level of appeal. By advising of your concerns in the way I'm suggesting, you're allowing the decision maker the ability to watch out for the evidence and consider it as it supports your position. Third, if after all of this, the WCB doesn't decide in your favor and you're heading to appeals, then you want to become Sherlock Holmes. Take this opportunity to find out as much about the decision maker's reason for not seeing things your way. This is where your situation becomes a fact-finding mission. In my opinion, it is the step that gets ignored the most and offers the greatest opportunities for success in overturning a decision later on. If you're at the point where WCB has made a decision on the claim and you disagree, you want to start your investigation with them. Begin by asking them to clarify their decision to you, meaning, what is the decision on the claim? What have they accepted? And write this down. Next, ask them for their rationale. What this means is have them tell you what evidence or factors did they look at or consider on the claim when making this decision. This is the most ignored step in the whole process, and it holds the most amount of ammunition for you because the WCB has to give you a reason for the decision they made. If it's not in the letter you receive, then have them tell you verbally on the phone. You will want to write this down as well. Now, they have to tell you the policy they considered. Maybe there's another policy that you can use or have them look at. You can decide this when you get off the phone and go to the policy yourself. Another reason this is crucial is because if you know their rationale, you'll know what evidence they considered to make their decision. From there, you can see if you have that evidence, if you need to get it, if you have other evidence to prove your position, or if you don't have anything and no chance of getting it to prove your case. In some cases, it can be the difference in perspective while looking at the same evidence. This is where knowing the policy that we talked about earlier could be used at higher levels of appeal to sway the decision maker in your favor. When you're writing the letter, make sure you discuss the details and the facts. Take the time to organize them in the correct sequence of what you want. Remember that you're asking the person to take time out of their day with a caseload of 40 other claims to decide in your favor. Make their job easy. Tell them which reports you're looking at. Tell a story with your timeline and point out the evidence. Lead them to the logical conclusion you want. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the time to go through the details of the letter and how to write it. This is a webinar in itself. But my hope is that by now, you would have some strategies to help you manage and appeal claims more effectively. So let's recap what we've learned. We went over WCB as an insurance company. We discussed claims packages, why you should get your own doctor, and resources available to you. We discussed appeals and how to make good decisions, how to make timelines, and get the information you need from WCB. And as you can see, none of this requires any special training or skill. It is simple steps that together help you influence a claim. And as promised, you can find the notes from this webinar by going to my website, wcbconsulting.ca/SCSA webinar. Remember the question I asked at the beginning of the presentation? Which one of the topics I discussed impacted you the most and you could implement right now in your company? When I started my business 10 years ago, I made a promise to always find or have the answer when it comes to WCB for my clients. Good, bad, or indifferent, we all feel better when we have answers to our questions. And this is why, after today, if I didn't answer your questions, then please email me at info@wcbconsulting.ca, and together we'll find the answer for you. Before we get into your questions, I just would like to take 2 minutes of your time to tell you a bit about a service that we offer, which is our online WCB claims management and appeals courses, as well as the free bonus I mentioned earlier. When we started today, I made some assumptions. I guess that you joined us because you wanted to learn how to manage and appeal WCB claims more effectively, with confidence, and in a better way than you've ever been doing thus far. That you may want to understand how to simplify dealing with WCB in the future. Perhaps you've spent money on a consultant in the past or relied on WCB for your information. However you've managed or appealed claims in the past, I think we can agree that WCB can be a challenge at the best of times. I hope I've shown you now that when you're working with the proper resources and guidance, claims management appeals is simple to do, which is why I set out to create training courses and resources for folks just like you that is unique and cost effective. It covers both claims management and appeals for any province, any industry, or any size of company. Whether you deal with one claim or 100 claims, this program will guide you when you need it, 24/7. And after one claim, the information and value you get will pay for itself. And we call it our Business Premium Program. This is an annual membership that contains a growing library of videos varying in 3 and 20 minutes of length, articles about the most pressing issues and how to resolve them, as well as templates that you can download instantly and put your logo on, such as the claims package we discussed earlier. We've made it easier to navigate so that when an accident occurs, you can log in and find a video where I tell you what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, as if I'm standing in your office. Underneath the video, you're going to find information to assist you, as well as any documents you should have are there for download and completion. It is a one-stop shop for any of your WCB needs. In addition, new content is created and uploaded regularly, which means as long as you retain your membership, you retain access to any new content we create. And as a member, we guarantee that regardless of your situation, we will provide you with an answer. If you don't find it in the program, you can email my team and someone will make sure you get the answers you're looking for. Even if it's not the answer you want, you'll at least be in a better position to manage or appeal your claim. Program is $84 a month, billed annually. And as a bonus and thank you to you and the SCSA for joining me today, I'm providing you with an exclusive offer. First 25 people that sign up for our business premium program before March 31st will get 1 hour of free coaching or consulting with me, a $250 value for free. Simply go to the wcbconsulting.ca/courses website and use the code SCSA 2021 at checkout, and you'll instantly unlock your membership. I want to thank you for spending this past hour with me, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you so much, Anthony. That was very, very informative. There's a lot of good information there. I know in my experience, like you had said, there's a lot of companies out there that don't necessarily know how to handle a claim until one comes along, and then they're kind of sinking in all the information and stuff that's out there, right? So super valuable. I do have a couple questions that have come in for you. A few of them I think you've covered, but there's a few here that I'm not sure if you did. So the first one is, what can be appealed? Is it the whole claim itself? Is there individual parts of a claim that can be appealed?
Any decision that is made on a claim. So, for example, if you're facing a situation where there's a claim that's been accepted and you disagree, you can appeal that. Certain benefits. The thing that I would caution folks about is that when you're appealing, you want to figure out what is the cost benefit to you. And so here's an example, is that in some situations, a claim might have so much cost on it that even if you appeal 12 weeks of wage replacement because you didn't think the worker was needed it, because it's over the maximum, it's not going to impact your premiums. So you're spending time and energy in doing this for no financial benefit. So typically what I would suggest is that in the event that someone is looking at appealing a claim, that you consider the cost benefit of it, especially if you're going to invest in a consultant or in someone else. For sure. Time is money, right?
I have another question around sort of what you discussed there with, why do we have to have WCB? Is it mandatory? I've had a few companies where, or I guess people telling me rather, about situations where they were injured and the company opted to pay them their salary and their expenses. Is that an option for companies to avoid those premium increases? And like you discussed, WCB is an insurance company, right?
Right. Short answer is no. There are situations where you could do some things. You're towing the line of collusion, where you're saying don't report to WCB or don't do this, and we'll just pay you. But what happens if this minor incident turns into a permanent issue, a permanent problem? Then you're going to have this person running to WCB and telling them everything that happened, and you're going to be faced with penalties and liabilities. But at the same time, if you choose to pay a worker, you're more than welcome to. But what will happen then is that WCB will send a check to you because it still has to reflect in claims costs. There are certain treatments that you could cover or assessments. And like, I'll give you an example. One of the things that we do with people is that if we know that a claim is going to take a long time to get actioned and they need an MRI, we might pay for the MRI and get it expedited. In Saskatchewan, sometimes we have to send people to Alberta to get it done faster for the private MRIs, but we'll pay for that and get it done and then submit the report to WCB.
Okay, okay, awesome. And then can you just, we only have a minute or so left here, but how exactly does a pre-existing condition affect a claim? You know, if somebody sort of had a bad back and then they tweaked it at work somehow, how does that affect the claim?
Yeah, so with pre-existing conditions, I mean, it depends on the pre-existing condition and what's actually happened. So if it is something that is in the body but has no effect on the claim or doesn't impact it, then nobody really cares about it. WCB doesn't look at it. It's just something they acknowledge. If it has the potential of delaying recovery, there might be opportunities for some relief there, as well as if, you know, use back as an example. So someone has a disc bulge, for example, that they've been able to work around and work through, and then they lift a box and all of a sudden it's so bad that they need surgery. There could be opportunities there for relief due to an aggravation of a pre-existing condition.
Okay. So I think just to sum it all up is really that every situation's really different, and really the biggest thing here is to be prepared for when it comes around, hey?
Exactly, and that's where I was saying that the focus that I had was on focusing on the principles. If you focus on the principles of WCB, it resolves almost 80% of your issues. So if you understand how it might work or how it could affect you, then the other 20% that's more claim specific, you can learn on the fly and make adjustments, but then your stress levels are nowhere near where they could be.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, Anthony, well, that's basically it for us. Thank you so much for coming out. That was super informative, and that's coming from somebody who deals with this stuff on a daily basis. Very informative. So if anybody wants to reach out to Anthony, his website is wcbconsulting.ca. And again, our information in these videos will be on all our social media channels, as well as on your website, it sounds like, directly. So
yes.
If you need to get a hold of Anthony, that's how you can reach him. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Remember, we do these webinars monthly. Next month on March 3rd, we are going to be hosting our next webinar, and it's all around our EHS analytics tool that we'll be launching. So it's a new program we've developed to help companies analyze and trend the injury statistics. So don't miss it if you can make it. Thanks again for joining us, and as always, stay safe.